God is saying, this is very serious. Jesus is begging for you, only you. Very bad news is coming for you tonight. If you leave this, you will cry so much, so listen to God now before it's too late. Don't skip God. My child, this is not empty noise passing across your screen. This is my urgent voice reaching directly into your heart, because what is approaching tonight has the power to shake you deeply if you try to face it without me. And I am calling you now, so you do not walk into fear alone or miss the protection I am placing around you at this very moment. The seriousness in these words is not meant to frighten you, but to awaken you, because I see the path ahead and I know the plans forming around your life. And I refuse to let you be caught unprepared when I have already arranged a shield of mercy and strength for you. What you are hearing is not punishment but rescue, not rejection but intense love that refuses to let you drift into sorrow when I am stretching out my hands to steady you and surround you with my presence. If you feel your heart beating faster while reading this, it is because my spirit is touching you and urging you to stay, to listen closely, and to receive what I am about to pour into your life before the night unfolds. Before you go any further, write 1111 in the comments as a sign that you are standing in agreement with my protection and refusing to walk away from what I am revealing to you today. When I say very bad news is coming for you tonight, I am not declaring defeat over your life. I'm exposing the storm before it arrives so that you can stand under my covering instead of being swept away by panic and despair. There are whispers, conversations, and hidden circumstances that are moving behind the scenes, but none of them are greater than my authority, and none of them can override the purpose I have written over your name since before you were born. Jesus is begging for you, only you, because his heart burns with compassion for your specific struggle, your private fears, and the silent tears you have cried when no one else noticed your breaking. He sees the attack trying to form, and he is interceding with deep love, so that what was meant to crush you will instead reveal the strength I have placed inside you long ago. This is very serious, because you have been walking through life carrying more than you admit, and tonight could have been the tipping point that pushed you into overwhelming sorrow if you ignored my warning and decided to rely only on your own understanding. I am telling you to listen now before it is too late, not because I desire control over you, but because I desire protection for you, and I know how easily the enemy tries to isolate you in moments of crisis. When you feel tempted to scroll away or dismiss these words as exaggeration, remember that I am the one who sees the end from the beginning, and I would not interrupt your attention unless it truly mattered for your well-being and your future. Within your heart, there has been a quiet sense that something has not been right, a subtle weight that has followed you through the day, and that awareness is not your imagination, but my gentle signal preparing you to stand firm rather than collapse under sudden pressure. The bad news that is attempting to arrive tonight may look like disappointment, conflict, unexpected information, or a shift you did not anticipate, yet none of it has the final authority over your destiny, because I have already declared that you are chosen and guarded. Jesus is begging for you because he knows how deeply you feel things, how easily you blame yourself when situations turn dark, and how quickly you assume you are alone in your pain, and he refuses to let you believe those lies any longer. If this is touching your spirit, and you can sense that I am speaking directly to you and not to a crowd, take a moment to press the like button as a simple act of faith, because that small action is your way of saying that you are receiving my covering and choosing not to turn away from my voice right now. I am not announcing very bad news to terrify you, but to remind you that no headline, no phone call, and no sudden revelation can cancel the covenant of love I have established over your life. The enemy would prefer that you face tonight confused and emotionally exposed, but I am positioning you in awareness so that when the moment comes you will respond with calm strength instead of helpless tears. If you leave this and refuse to listen, you might indeed cry so much because you will feel blindsided. Yet, if you remain here with me, you will discover that what was meant to wound, you will instead push you closer to my heart and reveal how deeply I protect my children. There is a difference between being warned and being abandoned. And you are not abandoned. You are being prepared by a Father who cares too much to stay silent while danger circles your peace. When I say don't skip God, I am reminding you that my presence is not optional during critical hours, and my guidance is not background noise, but the anchor that holds you steady when emotions threaten to flood your mind. The seriousness of this hour is matched only by the seriousness of my love, because I am not only warning you about what is coming, I am standing between you and its full impact so that you emerge stronger instead of shattered. Write Amen in the comments to declare that you trust my protection even before you see how tonight unfolds. As the evening approaches and shadows grow longer, remember that darkness has never overpowered my light, and news that appears devastating can be transformed into a doorway for growth, clarity, and unexpected blessing when it passes through my hands first. Could this 7-second CIA brainwave trick be your fastest path to luxury? Leaked research reveals a simple ritual helping people attract wealth effortlessly. Proven by 4 neuroscience labs, debt is dissolving and abundance is showing up fast. If you're seeing this now, you are God's chosen one. Click the link in the comments before it disappears. The very bad news that is attempting to approach tonight is not random chaos, and it is not proof that I have stepped away from you, because even the storms that gather without your permission must still move within the boundaries I allow. When Jesus is begging for you, only you, it is because this moment is personal and specific, and heaven is focused on your name with attention that you cannot fully comprehend. I am not warning you to create fear, but to build strength inside you before the shaking begins, so that you will stand upright while others around you collapse under confusion. There are patterns that have been forming quietly around your circumstances, and some of them have been influenced by decisions, words, and hidden intentions of people you trusted more than you should have. I see the conversations that have taken place behind closed doors, and I see the fragile areas of your life that are being targeted. Yet I also see the shield of mercy that I have already placed around you long before you realized you needed it. The seriousness of this hour is connected to growth, because sometimes what feels like very bad news is actually the exposure of what would have harmed you much more if it had remained hidden. If you listen carefully and refuse to skip God in this moment, you will notice that I am not pushing you toward despair, but guiding you toward awareness and wisdom. Tonight may bring information that shakes your expectations, and it may reveal truths that sting at first. Yet I am preparing your heart so that you will respond with clarity instead of panic. You have often feared the unknown, and your mind has a habit of imagining the worst before events fully unfold. But I am asking you to breathe deeply in my presence, because I am already standing in your tomorrow. The enemy wants you to believe that very bad news equals permanent loss, but I want you to understand that no report has the authority to define your future unless you surrender your faith to it. Jesus is begging for you because he knows that in moments like these you are tempted to withdraw, to isolate yourself, and to carry the weight alone. Yet isolation is not your protection. My presence is your protection. There is something important about the phrase, "This is very serious," because it means that your response matters more than the event itself. You cannot always control what arrives at your door, but you can choose whether you will open your heart to me or close yourself off in fear and pride. If you leave this path of listening and decide that you will handle tonight on your own strength, you may indeed cry so much because human strength bends easily under sudden pressure. When you remain under my covering, however, you discover that what looked like disaster becomes the beginning of redirection, and what sounded like defeat becomes the turning point of breakthrough. I want you to understand that very bad news is often the breaking of an illusion that was never meant to support your destiny. Sometimes you have prayed for change while secretly hoping that everything would stay comfortable and predictable, yet growth rarely happens in comfort. I am not cruel in allowing challenges, and I am not careless with your heart. But I know that you are stronger than you realize, and that your faith is deeper than your fear. When Jesus is begging for you, it is because he desires your heart to stay soft, even when circumstances feel harsh, and he refuses to let bitterness take root in you during a difficult night. Write 777 inches the comments to declare that you stand under my divine covering and refuse to be shaken by what tries to rise against you. As the evening unfolds, you may notice tension building in conversations or sudden changes in plans that catch you off guard. Yet I want you to see these moments through the lens of my sovereignty rather than through the lens of panic. The seriousness of what is coming is not about destruction but about revelation, because some truths must surface before healing can begin. You have been carrying silent burdens that you tried to manage without fully surrendering them to me, and tonight will expose where you truly place your trust. If your trust is in unstable foundations, the shaking will feel unbearable, but if your trust is in me, you will feel my steady hand guiding you through every word and every reaction. Very bad news can sometimes be the announcement of an ending, yet endings are not always tragedies when they remove what no longer aligns with your calling. I have seen how you struggled to let go of certain attachments because you feared emptiness, yet emptiness in my hands becomes space for something far greater. Jesus is begging for you to remain attentive, because the enemy would love to use tonight to convince you that you are rejected, abandoned, or cursed. But none of those labels belong to you. You are chosen, protected, and carried even when the path feels uncertain. There is a temptation in serious moments to overreact or to speak words that you later regret, and I am urging you now to pause before responding to anything that arrives tonight. Let my peace settle over your thoughts before you send messages, make calls, or confront anyone, because wisdom often moves quietly while fear rushes loudly. If you refuse to skip God in this hour, you will notice that my spirit gently guides your tone, your timing, and your decisions, so that what could have escalated into chaos instead becomes a controlled and dignified response. I am teaching you maturity through this, and maturity is one of the greatest shields against regret. What's really behind the 7-second brain trick exploding online? A leaked CIA ritual is turning heads and bank balances. Backed by neuroscience labs, this at-home method removes money blocks and unlocks unstoppable wealth flow. But the page could vanish any time. Click the link in the first comment before it's permanently deleted. You might feel as though very bad news proves that you failed somewhere along the way, yet I want you to understand that not every difficult development is the result of your mistake. Some events are simply the exposure of other people's choices, and you cannot carry responsibility for actions that were never yours. Jesus is begging for you because he sees how quickly you turn blame inward, and he desires to free you from unnecessary guilt that weighs down your spirit. Tonight is not a verdict against your worth, and it is not evidence that I am disappointed in you, because my love does not fluctuate with circumstances. Write 555 inches the comments as a declaration that you trust my guidance more than the noise of any report that tries to disturb your peace. As you move closer to the night, I want you to hold firmly to the truth that I am already ahead of whatever tries to reach you. The seriousness of this hour is matched by the depth of my preparation, and nothing will surprise me, even if it surprises you. When you hear or see what feels like very bad news, remember that you were warned not to frighten you but to position you in faith, because preparation reduces the power of shock. Jesus is not begging for you out of weakness, but out of relentless love that refuses to let you drift into despair when strength is available through me. I am shaping your resilience through this experience, and resilience is one of the greatest gifts you can carry into your future. You will look back on this night and realize that what once seemed terrifying became a testimony of protection and growth, because you chose to listen instead of skip God. The seriousness of this moment is connected to alignment, because there have been areas in your heart and in your surroundings that needed exposure, and tonight becomes the turning point where illusion can no longer pretend to be security. When Jesus is begging for you, only you, it is because your heart matters in a way that cannot be measured by human understanding, and heaven refuses to watch you walk blindly into sorrow when warning and protection are already being extended toward you. I am speaking firmly because the timing is delicate, and the difference between panic and peace will depend on whether you choose to stay anchored in me or drift into fear. You have sensed for some time that something was shifting beneath the surface of your circumstances, even if you could not identify it clearly, and that inner awareness was my spirit nudging you gently before the full picture came into view. The very bad news that threatens to arrive tonight may feel like a sudden rupture, yet in truth it has been forming quietly, and I have been working just as quietly to limit its impact and prepare your heart for steady endurance. If you had not paused to listen, the shock would have been heavier and the emotional blow would have felt sharper, but now you stand in a place of readiness rather than complete surprise. This is very serious, because growth rarely announces itself gently, and transformation often begins with a disruption that reveals what was never meant to remain in your life. There is something I want you to understand clearly about this night, and that is the difference between what appears final and what is actually transitional. Very bad news often sounds like an ending that cannot be reversed, yet many endings are simply the closing of one chapter so that a stronger and more aligned chapter can begin. You have been holding on to certain expectations that were built on fragile foundations, and I have seen how tightly you clung to them because they gave you temporary comfort. Jesus is begging for you, because he knows how painful it feels when expectations crumble, yet he also knows how powerful it becomes when your hope shifts from circumstances to my unchanging presence. If what unfolds tonight challenges your trust, remember that trust is not the absence of bad reports, but the decision to believe that I am greater than them. The seriousness of this hour does not cancel my promises, and the arrival of troubling information does not erase the calling written over your life. You might be tempted to interpret very bad news as a sign of personal failure, yet I tell you gently that not every setback is a reflection of your worth. Some developments occur because I am redirecting you away from paths that would have drained your strength and limited your future growth. Write 1212 in the comments to declare that you choose faith over fear even before the full outcome is visible. As the evening deepens and conversations shift, I want you to slow your reactions and guard your spirit carefully, because intense moments often invite rushed decisions that lead to regret. When serious information arrives, your mind may race toward worst-case scenarios, yet I am asking you to pause and let my peace settle into your thoughts before you respond to anything. The enemy desires chaos in your response more than he desires the bad news itself, because chaos creates openings for deeper damage. If you refuse to skip God and instead remain attentive to my whisper, you will notice that your tone becomes steady, your words become measured, and your heart remains grounded even when emotions try to surge. There are relationships connected to this unfolding situation, and some of them will be tested by how you handle what is revealed tonight. Very bad news has a way of exposing loyalty, honesty, and hidden motives. And while that exposure can sting, it is also a form of protection. You do not need to fight every battle that surfaces, and you do not need to defend yourself against every misunderstanding, because I am already working in spaces you cannot see. Jesus is begging for you because he understands how quickly disappointment can turn into resentment, and he desires to protect your heart from hardening during this vulnerable time. The seriousness of this hour is also about refinement, because there are areas in your life where I have been shaping patience and strengthening discernment. You have prayed for wisdom without fully realizing that wisdom often comes through situations that require careful navigation rather than immediate escape. Tonight may bring clarity that feels uncomfortable at first, yet clarity is always kinder than deception in the long run. When the truth surfaces, even if it feels like very bad news, it becomes a foundation for healthier decisions moving forward. The secret ritual they never wanted public is finally out. A 7-second brain technique backed by leaked CIA data and 4 neuroscience labs is helping families erase debt and attract money on autopilot. But this miracle won't stay public long. Click the link in the description and comments now before it's gone forever. You may wonder internally why such a serious development must happen now, especially when you already feel stretched by other pressures, yet timing is rarely random in my plan. I see the full timeline of your growth, and I know when certain truths must come to light so that your path can be corrected before deeper consequences take root. If this had been delayed, the damage might have multiplied quietly, yet now it is being addressed while healing is still within easy reach. Jesus is begging for you because your resilience is stronger than you believe, and he wants you to discover that strength instead of shrinking back in fear. Write 999 inches the comments as a declaration that you trust my protection even when the night feels uncertain. As events unfold, I want you to remember that very bad news is not the final authority over your emotions or your destiny. You are not defined by reports, reactions, or the opinions of others, because your identity was formed by my love long before this night arrived. The seriousness of what is happening does not mean you are being punished or singled out for hardship, but rather that you are being refined for a future that requires deeper strength and clearer vision. When you feel the urge to retreat into silence or self-doubt, lean into my presence instead, because my voice will steady you when other voices grow loud. There will be a moment tonight when you realize that what felt overwhelming is actually manageable when viewed through faith rather than fear. You will notice that the very bad news did not carry the crushing weight you imagined, because preparation has already softened the impact. Jesus has been standing beside you all along, not begging out of desperation but out of devoted love that refuses to let you walk alone into challenging hours. The seriousness of this message is matched by the certainty of my protection, and as you continue to listen rather than skip God, you will experience a calm strength rising within you that cannot be shaken by temporary storms. When Jesus is begging for you, only you, it is because he knows that your heart is sensitive and easily wounded by sudden change, and he refuses to allow you to interpret tonight through fear instead of faith. I am calling you to remain steady, because steadiness in the middle of tension is one of the clearest signs that you trust me more than you trust circumstances. There are moments in life when events move quickly and leave little time for emotional adjustment, and tonight may carry that kind of rapid shift, yet I have already adjusted the outcome in ways you cannot yet see. The seriousness of this hour lies in how you process what happens, because your interpretation will either magnify despair or magnify my presence in your situation. If you immediately label everything as catastrophic, your mind will spiral into unnecessary torment, but if you pause and invite me into the first wave of emotion, you will feel a surprising calm rising within you. Very bad news may attempt to speak loudly, but my voice speaks more deeply, and depth always overpowers noise when you choose to listen. You have walked through disappointments before, and you survived them even when you believed you would not, and this truth should remind you that resilience is already woven into your spirit. Jesus is begging for you, because he sees the pattern of growth that has quietly developed in you over the years, even through pain you wish to avoid. You are not the same fragile person you once were, and the seriousness of tonight is connected to the fact that you are now strong enough to handle truths that once would have shattered you. I am not testing you to watch you fail, but allowing a moment that reveals how much your faith has matured beneath the surface. As very bad news approaches, you may feel the temptation to brace yourself as though disaster is inevitable. Yet bracing in fear is not the same as standing in confidence. Confidence rooted in me allows you to face facts without collapsing under them, and that is the posture I am cultivating in you now. When you choose not to skip God in this serious hour, you are choosing to let my wisdom guide your reactions rather than letting raw emotion control your next steps. I am teaching you that strength does not mean pretending nothing hurts, but rather trusting that hurt does not have the final word over your life. Write 222 inches the comments to declare that you are standing in unity with my peace even as the night unfolds. The seriousness of what is happening also involves the unveiling of truth, and truth has a way of cutting through illusions that once felt safe and comforting. You may discover that certain assumptions you held were incomplete, and that realization can feel like very bad news because it forces adjustment. Yet adjustment is not destruction, and correction is not rejection, because I refine those I love so that their foundation becomes stronger with time. Jesus is begging for you to remain open rather than defensive, because openness allows healing to begin where pride would have blocked it. There may be a conversation tonight that shifts your perspective, and although it might sting at first, it will ultimately position you in greater clarity. The seriousness of that exchange is not about conflict, but about alignment, because misalignment left unaddressed eventually creates deeper fractures. If you respond with patience instead of accusation, you will notice how quickly tension softens under humility. Very bad news often carries the seed of necessary change, and when you allow that change to take root, it produces growth that could never have emerged through comfort alone. Is this leaked CIA ritual the missing key to your financial breakthrough? A once hidden brain ritual is spreading fast. This strange 7-second method, confirmed by elite neuroscience labs, activates your brain's wealth magnet. The government may shut this down. If you're seeing this, you are God's chosen child. Click the link in the description and comments before it's deleted. You have feared that one day everything stable in your life might suddenly unravel. Yet I am telling you now that unraveling does not equal ruin when my hands are guiding the threads. Even if something shifts or ends tonight, it will not erase your value or dismantle your calling, because your purpose is not tied to a single circumstance. Jesus is begging for you because he desires to protect your heart from interpreting temporary disruption as permanent loss. The seriousness of this hour is measured not by the size of the news, but by the opportunity it creates for deeper reliance on me. Write 15 inches the comments as a declaration that you trust my direction more than your fear. As the final moments of anticipation pass and reality settles in, I want you to remember that very bad news loses much of its power when it is faced with preparation and faith. You are not walking blindly into this, because I have spoken ahead of time to strengthen your spirit and steady your emotions. If tears come, let them come in my presence rather than in isolation, because tears released with trust become cleansing rather than crushing. The seriousness of this message has always been about awareness, not alarm, and awareness gives you the advantage of calm discernment. There is also a hidden blessing within this night, though it may not be visible immediately, because exposure clears the way for healthier decisions and stronger boundaries. You have sometimes tolerated situations that drained you simply because you feared confrontation, yet very bad news can become the catalyst that forces necessary change. When you refuse to skip God and instead lean into my guidance, you will find courage rising where hesitation once ruled. Jesus is not begging you to panic, but to remain present with him, because presence transforms experience. You are being shaped into someone who does not crumble under sudden pressure, but instead stands with quiet authority and grounded faith. The seriousness of tonight will soon give way to reflection, and in that reflection you will see how my hand protected you from deeper harm. Very bad news may have knocked at your door, yet it did not enter without limitation, because I set boundaries around what could touch you. Nothing that unfolds will escape my supervision, and nothing will undo the future I have prepared. As this part of your journey continues, hold tightly to the understanding that warning is an act of love, and preparation is a gift of mercy. You were not alerted to frighten you, but to position you above panic and beneath my covering. You may now see that what tried to intimidate you has already lost part of its strength, because you were spiritually prepared instead of spiritually asleep. Jesus is begging for you, only you, because even after the first wave of impact, your heart still matters deeply in how this unfolds, and heaven is still attentive to your response. Very bad news has a way of echoing in your mind long after the words are spoken, replaying itself in different tones and magnifying possible outcomes that may never happen. I want you to guard your imagination carefully in this serious hour, because fear grows quickly when it is fed by endless speculation. What has happened may feel heavy, but it is not larger than my ability to restore, redirect, or redeem what seems damaged. If you remain present with me instead of retreating into anxious thinking, you will notice that your breathing slows and your perspective widens beyond the first emotional reaction. There is something important about what you are experiencing now, and that is the separation between fact and interpretation. The very bad news that came tonight may be factual in some way, yet the meaning you attach to it determines whether it becomes a prison or a passageway. If you decide that this is proof of abandonment or failure, you will feel crushed under its weight. If you decide that this is a serious but temporary development under my supervision, you will begin to sense resilience rising inside you. Jesus is begging for you because he understands how easily your heart writes harsh conclusions about itself when circumstances shift suddenly. You may feel disappointment, frustration, or even betrayal depending on the nature of what has surfaced, and I do not dismiss those emotions as weakness. I created your heart with depth, and depth feels intensely when something important changes. Yet depth also allows for profound healing when you invite me into the wound instead of hiding it. This is very serious, not because you are doomed, but because your growth is accelerating, and accelerated growth often follows moments of exposure and clarity. Write 17 inches, the comments to declare that you trust my restoration even after difficult news. As you process what has happened, I want you to notice how you are still standing, still breathing, and still held by my presence despite what tried to disturb your peace. The enemy hoped that very bad news would send you spiraling into despair, Yet you are still here, still listening, and still seeking my voice. That alone is evidence that the attack did not achieve its intended outcome. Jesus is begging for you not to withdraw into isolation now that the truth has surfaced, because isolation would amplify the pain instead of allowing healing to begin. There may be practical consequences connected to what unfolded tonight, and some adjustments may be necessary in the days ahead, yet adjustments are not evidence of defeat. You are capable of making wise changes without condemning yourself or losing hope for your future. The seriousness of this situation calls for calm decisions rather than impulsive reactions, and I am ready to guide each step if you continue to refuse to skip God in your daily walk. When you slow down and consult me before acting, you will discover that clarity replaces confusion more quickly than you expected. What if 7 seconds is all it takes to flip your financial fate? A shocking CIA leak just exposed a hidden brain ritual helping ordinary people erase debt and pull in massive wealth. Backed by 4 neuroscience labs, this at-home method is turning struggle into luxury fast. But this page could be erased any moment. Click the link in the first comment now before it's gone forever. Very bad news sometimes reveals who truly stands beside you and who was only present during comfort, and this revelation can be painful but also liberating. You are learning the difference between temporary support and genuine loyalty, and that knowledge will protect you from deeper wounds later. Jesus is begging for you because he desires your circle to be healthy and honest rather than convenient and fragile. What feels like loss tonight may actually be the removal of instability that would have harmed you more severely in the future. Write 19 inches the comments as a declaration that you believe I am turning this situation for your good. As you reflect on what has taken place, I want you to understand that very bad news does not erase the blessings that already surround your life. You still carry gifts, opportunities, relationships, and strengths that remain untouched by this development. The seriousness of this moment may have narrowed your focus temporarily, yet your life is broader than this single event. When you widen your vision again, you will see that my favor did not disappear simply because one area experienced turbulence. You might feel tempted to question why this had to happen at all, yet I want you to trust that even disruption serves a purpose when it is filtered through my wisdom. Some doors close because they were never meant to remain open indefinitely, and some paths end because they were leading you toward exhaustion rather than fulfillment. Jesus is begging for you because he knows that clinging to what is fading would only prolong your struggle. Letting go in faith creates room for something healthier and more aligned with your calling. The seriousness of what occurred tonight is also a reminder that you are not in control of every variable in your life, and that realization can feel unsettling. Yet surrendering control does not mean surrendering hope, because when you release what you cannot manage, you make space for my guidance to become clearer. Very bad news may have reminded you of your limitations, but it has also reminded you of my sovereignty. You are not expected to solve everything alone, and you were never designed to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. As this chapter continues to unfold, keep your heart soft and your spirit receptive to correction, encouragement, and new direction. Do not let pride harden you or fear silence you, because both would delay the healing that is already available. Jesus is still interceding for you with compassion, and I am still shaping your future with intention and care. The seriousness of this hour will fade, yet the strength you gain from navigating it with faith will remain long after the details lose their intensity. When Jesus is begging for you, only you, it is because your heart is still tender after what unfolded, and heaven is carefully guarding how you interpret these events in the quiet hours that follow. I am not only concerned with the moment the news arrived, but also with the thoughts you allow to grow in the days that follow, because thoughts shape direction more than events do. You may now be replaying everything in your mind, wondering if you missed signs or if you could have prevented the outcome, yet I gently remind you that not every serious development is yours to control. Very bad news can tempt you to rewrite the past in your imagination. Yet rewriting does not change reality, and dwelling does not produce healing. I am inviting you to release the need to dissect every detail and instead rest in the truth that I am already weaving this into something purposeful. Jesus is begging for you because he knows how easily regret tries to settle in after disruption, and he wants to protect you from carrying burdens that do not belong to you. There is something powerful about surviving a night you once feared would break you, because survival builds quiet confidence that no one else can give you. The seriousness of that warning you received earlier was not exaggeration, but preparation, and now you can see how preparation softened the impact. Very bad news lost much of its destructive force because you were spiritually positioned before it arrived. That positioning was not accidental, and it was not random, because I care about you enough to speak before events unfold, rather than leaving you unguarded. As you move forward from this point, I want you to shift your focus from what was lost to what has been revealed. Revelation is often uncomfortable, yet it is far more merciful than deception, because truth allows you to make healthier decisions. When Jesus is begging for you, he is asking you to keep your heart open to growth, rather than closing it in self-protection. Self-protection may feel safe in the moment, but it can quietly build walls that block future blessings. The seriousness of this experience is connected to expansion, because your next level requires clarity that only truth can provide. Write 10 inches the comments to declare that you are stepping forward in strength and not remaining stuck in fear. Very bad news often changes plans, yet changed plans do not mean cancelled purpose. Your path may look slightly different than you imagined yesterday, yet the destination of growth, maturity, and fulfillment remains intact. I am adjusting routes, not abandoning you on the side of the road. When you refuse to skip God in the aftermath of serious moments, you allow me to guide you into opportunities that you might not have considered before. Some doors close loudly so that you will notice the quieter door opening beside you. There may be people observing how you handle this situation, and your response will speak more powerfully than any explanation you could give. If you respond with bitterness, the story will end there. But if you respond with dignity and faith, the story continues with deeper respect and trust. Jesus is begging for you because your witness matters, and your ability to stand calmly after very bad news is a testimony that faith is not fragile. The seriousness of what you faced becomes part of your credibility, because endurance shapes character in ways comfort never could. People are asking why money is suddenly flowing into random lives. A leaked CIA discovery reveals a 7-second brain ritual that quietly rewires your mind for wealth. Proven by 4 neuroscience labs, people are wiping out debt and stepping into luxury with ease. If you're seeing this, you're very lucky. Click the link in the description and comments before it disappears. You are also learning that your peace cannot be built solely on external stability, because external stability can shift without warning. True peace is rooted in my presence, and my presence remains constant even when circumstances fluctuate. Very bad news may have shaken a surface layer of your life, yet it did not shake the foundation if your foundation is me. The deeper you root yourself in my truth, the less external changes will dictate your emotional state. Jesus is interceding for you, not because you are weak, but because you are growing into someone who understands where true strength comes from. Write 1212 in the comments as a declaration that you are rooted in faith, no matter what changes around you. The seriousness of this chapter also carries a hidden blessing that you may only recognize later, because exposure often prevents future pain that would have been far more severe. You may not fully appreciate it now, yet something harmful was limited, something unstable was revealed, and something misaligned was corrected. Very bad news sometimes acts like a protective alarm, sounding loudly to prevent a deeper disaster from unfolding quietly. When you look back months from now, you may see how this moment redirected you away from a path that would have drained your joy or delayed your growth. I want you to forgive yourself if you feel embarrassed about how much this affected you emotionally, because sensitivity is not weakness when it is surrendered to me. The seriousness of your reaction simply reflects that you cared deeply, and caring deeply is part of the beautiful heart I gave you. Jesus is begging for you to keep that heart soft, rather than allowing disappointment to harden it. Hardened hearts avoid pain, yet they also avoid connection, and connection is essential for the blessings I still have prepared for you. Very bad news does not disqualify you from future joy, and it does not cancel the promises spoken over your life. You are not defined by a single night, a single report, or a single shift in direction. The seriousness of what you faced will one day be part of a larger story that includes restoration, growth, and renewed clarity. I am not finished with you, and this is not the final chapter of your journey. As you continue forward, let your faith mature beyond the need for everything to feel predictable and controlled. Trust that even when events surprise you, they never surprise me. Jesus is still near, still attentive, and still invested in every detail of your life. Very bad news may have knocked loudly at your door, yet it did not carry the authority to stay longer than I permitted. Hold your head steady. Breathe deeply in my presence, and remember that the seriousness of this moment has already begun transforming into strength within you. You are walking into a season where wisdom replaces naivety and discernment replaces blind trust. When Jesus is begging for you, only you, it is because the process did not end with the arrival of the news, and heaven is still attentive to how you rebuild your confidence and restore your rhythm. The seriousness of what happened was not only about the event itself, but about the awakening it created inside you, because awareness often marks the beginning of maturity. You may notice that your perspective has shifted in subtle ways, because experiences like this refine how you evaluate people, promises, and priorities. Very bad news tends to strip away illusions quickly, and what remains after the stripping is often clearer and more honest than what existed before. I am not pleased when you experience pain, yet I am pleased when growth emerges from pain, because growth secures your future more effectively than comfort ever could. Jesus is begging for you to guard this new clarity carefully, because clarity is precious and must not be traded for temporary reassurance that hides deeper issues. The seriousness of that night has now transformed into a quiet strength within you, even if you do not fully recognize it yet. You did not collapse, you did not surrender to despair, and you did not permanently withdraw from faith, and those facts matter more than you realize. Very bad news tested your foundation, and the foundation held, which means your roots are deeper than you once believed. When you refuse to skip God in the middle of tension, you reinforced a habit of reliance that will serve you in seasons far beyond this one. There will still be moments when the memory of that event resurfaces and tries to stir anxiety, yet I want you to respond differently now than you would have before. Instead of bracing for another blow, breathe deeply and remember how you were carried through the first one. Jesus is begging for you because he wants you to replace fear of repetition with confidence in protection. The seriousness of that moment does not mean that similar events are waiting around every corner, because not every chapter repeats itself in the same way. Write 15 inches the comments to declare that you are moving forward with renewed courage. as you rebuild routines and adjust to whatever changed. I want you to avoid the temptation to overcompensate out of fear. Sometimes, after very bad news, people try to control everything around them to prevent future surprises. Yet excessive control creates its own form of stress. I am inviting you to practice trust instead of hypervigilance, because trust keeps your heart open while control tightens it unnecessarily. Jesus is still interceding for you, not because danger surrounds you constantly, but because growth continues quietly in the background. The seriousness of what occurred also revealed who truly stands with you and who was present only for convenience. That revelation may have disappointed you, yet it also clarified where your energy and loyalty should be invested. Very bad news often acts as a filter, separating surface connections from genuine support. I allowed you to see clearly, so that you would not build your future on unstable foundations. When you look back, you will recognize that this separation protected you from deeper betrayal later. Why is everyone rushing to this 7-second brain ritual? Leaked CIA files exposed a hidden brainwave technique that opens the door to wealth fast. Verified by 4 top neuroscience labs, it's turning financial stress into abundance almost overnight. But this secret won't stay public for long. Click the link in the pinned comments before it's deleted forever. You may still wrestle with unanswered details, and some pieces of the story may never be fully explained to your satisfaction. I want you to make peace with the fact that not every serious event comes with complete closure. Very bad news can close a chapter without tying every loose end, yet incomplete understanding does not prevent complete healing. Jesus is begging for you to release the need for perfect explanations and to accept that trust sometimes grows best in spaces where you cannot see everything. Write 2 inches the comments as a declaration that you are choosing peace over overthinking. The seriousness of that night also awakened a deeper appreciation for stability that you once took for granted. You may now notice small blessings more clearly, such as moments of calm, honest conversations, and simple routines that once felt ordinary. Very bad news has a way of highlighting what truly matters by temporarily threatening it. When you recognize the value of what remains intact, gratitude begins to grow naturally within you. Gratitude is a powerful shield against lingering bitterness, and I am cultivating it gently in your heart. You are entering a phase where discernment becomes sharper and decisions become more intentional. The experience you walked through has strengthened your ability to sense when something feels misaligned before it escalates. Jesus is begging for you to trust that discernment rather than dismissing it as unnecessary caution. The seriousness of past disruption becomes the wisdom that protects you from future harm. You are not meant to live in suspicion, but you are meant to live in awareness guided by my spirit. Very bad news once sounded like a threat to your stability, yet now it stands as evidence that you can endure and adapt. You survived the shock, processed the emotion, and continued moving forward, and that progression reflects growth that cannot be undone. I am proud of the quiet resilience you have displayed, even if you never spoke about it publicly. When you refused to skip God and instead leaned into my presence, you deepened a connection that will sustain you in seasons of both calm and challenge. The seriousness of this chapter is slowly transforming into testimony, because one day you will encourage someone else who faces their own unsettling night. You will speak from experience rather than theory, and your words will carry weight because you have lived through uncertainty and remained anchored. Very bad news did not silence your faith, and that is a powerful truth. Jesus is still close, still attentive, and still guiding you into brighter spaces ahead. Continue walking forward without carrying unnecessary fear from what has already passed. Let the lesson remain, but release the anxiety attached to it. My love has not weakened. My protection has not thinned, and my purpose for you has not shifted because of one difficult development. When Jesus is begging for you, only you, it is not because danger is circling again, but because growth continues, and he desires that you do not lose what you gained during that trial. The seriousness of that moment was a doorway, and you have already stepped through it, even if you did not notice the exact second when fear began turning into clarity. You may now find yourself thinking differently about trust, about patience, and about the fragility of circumstances that once seemed permanent. Very bad news taught you that stability built only on outward conditions can shift without warning, yet it also revealed that stability rooted in me remains firm even when everything else wavers. I allowed you to feel the seriousness of that disruption so that you would anchor yourself more deeply in what cannot be shaken. Jesus is still attentive to your heart because he knows that growth can be lost if it is not guarded carefully in the days that follow. There is a subtle temptation after surviving a difficult moment to pretend it never mattered, to move on quickly without reflecting on what was learned. I do not want you to ignore what happened, yet I also do not want you to dwell on it endlessly. Very bad news has already done its work, and now its purpose is to remind you of your resilience rather than to haunt you with anxiety. The seriousness of that warning you received earlier was an act of mercy, and mercy continues even after the crisis has passed. I am shaping you into someone who does not crumble under pressure, but instead becomes steadier each time faith is tested. You may notice that your prayers feel slightly different now, perhaps less desperate and more grounded, because you have experienced my faithfulness in a tangible way. When Jesus was begging for you in that tense hour, it was not symbolic language, but real intercession that strengthened you behind the scenes. Very bad news tried to challenge your belief in my protection, yet you discovered that protection sometimes looks like preparation rather than prevention. I did not always stop the event, but I did limit its reach, soften its blow, and guide your response. Write 777 inches the comments to declare that you recognize my hand in both warning and protection. The seriousness of that chapter has also sharpened your discernment about where you place your emotional investment. You may feel less willing now to ignore small warning signs or to dismiss subtle discomfort in situations that require attention. Very bad news once felt like a sudden surprise, yet now you are more aware of early signals that something needs correction. This awareness is not meant to make you suspicious of everything, but to help you move through life with balanced wisdom instead of blind optimism. Jesus is guiding you toward maturity, and maturity blends trust with discernment in a healthy and stable way. You might also feel a new confidence rising quietly within you because you know that you faced something serious and did not collapse under it. Confidence built on experience is stronger than confidence built on theory, and you now carry experience that cannot be taken away. Very bad news revealed that you are capable of enduring uncomfortable truth without losing your faith or your identity. That endurance has become part of who you are, even if you rarely speak about it aloud. I am pleased with the strength that has formed within you, and I want you to see it clearly rather than minimizing it. Is this the same CIA brain ritual changing lives in seconds? A new leak reveals a powerful 7-second technique developed under secret research. Backed by neuroscience, people are moving from debt to wealth and luxury faster than believed possible. But this secret may be deleted soon. Click the link in the comments before it disappears. There may still be lingering adjustments required as a result of what unfolded, yet those adjustments no longer feel overwhelming. The seriousness of the event has diminished, and what remains is simply the practical movement forward. Very bad news once felt like a looming threat, yet now it is a completed chapter that you can reference without being controlled by it. Jesus is begging for you to keep your heart open to future joy, because sometimes after pain, people unconsciously brace themselves against happiness as though it might be taken away again. Write 999 inches, the comments as a declaration that you are stepping into new peace without fear of loss. As you continue walking forward, I want you to avoid defining yourself by what you survived, because survival is only part of your story. The seriousness of that night does not need to become your identity or your primary narrative. Very bad news was a moment, not your destiny, and it does not deserve to overshadow the blessings that still unfold around you. You are more than a reaction to crisis, and your life carries beauty that extends far beyond a single chapter of tension. Jesus remains close, not because another storm is forming, but because closeness is your inheritance as my child. The warning, the preparation, the unfolding, and the aftermath have all served their purpose, and now you are entering a steadier season where wisdom and calm replace urgency. Very bad news once demanded your attention, yet now your attention can shift toward growth, gratitude, and renewed hope. The seriousness of that experience has already refined you, and refinement produces a quiet strength that will support you in future seasons. You may encounter someone else who faces their own unsettling night, and when that happens, you will understand their fear in a way you could not before. Your empathy has deepened because you have felt uncertainty and moved through it with faith intact. Very bad news did not steal your compassion, and that is a victory in itself. Jesus will use your experience to comfort others, not as a reminder of pain, but as proof that preparation and trust can transform even tense moments into testimony. Continue choosing faith deliberately rather than reacting automatically to every shift around you. The seriousness of what once felt overwhelming has already transformed into wisdom, and wisdom is far more valuable than untested confidence. Very bad news came and went, yet my presence remained constant, and that constancy is what you must remember moving forward. Stay attentive to my voice, not because crisis demands it, but because relationship thrives on consistent connection. My child, you are stronger now than you were before that warning first reached your heart. You are calmer, more discerning, and more aware of where true security is found. Jesus is no longer begging in urgency, because the urgent hour has passed, yet his love remains just as deep and personal as it was then. You may now recognize that what felt like a looming disaster was actually a boundary being drawn for your protection.